Hi, I'm AnewZ and you're watching AnewZ. Here are the headlines. AnewZ interviews President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev. Brazilian specialists decoded the black boxes from the crashed Azerbaijan Airlines plane. Dozens killed in a strong earthquake that hit Tibet. Thank you for tuning in. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev gave an interview to several television channels, including AnewZ. During the interview, Aliyev addressed key issues and shared his views on the country's social and economic situation, international relations, and the challenges of the modern era.
Mr. President, thank you very much for speaking to AnewZ. And as an international channel that broadcasts in English, I want to thank you particularly for agreeing to speak to us today in English for our viewers. I'd like to ask you about COP29. The whole world pretty much came to Baku. There were many tough negotiations. There were some noticeable absentees. The President of France, the President of the European Commission did not attend, but despite that, a deal was done. Can I ask for your reflections on the achievements of the event and also what needs to happen this year and beyond to keep that momentum?
Yes, COP29 was a big challenge for us and, of course, a big opportunity, and our task was to convert the challenge into success. Of course, we clearly realized that Azerbaijan, as not the biggest gas emission country, cannot play a decisive role in bringing the world together. But we thought that our experience in international institutions and diversified foreign policy will help us to build bridges. So as soon as we were awarded with COP29, December 23, we started to be deeply involved in the substance. Frankly speaking, before, we were not very, actively involved in the process. And we've seen that one of the main impediments to achieve success is lack of trust between Global South and the Global North, between those countries which are the big polluters, if I could name them like that, and those countries who suffer from that. And we've seen the disbalance. Those countries which have existential threat with respect to climate change, their gas emission is beyond 0.1, but they are really under threat. So their life, their future, the whole existence of the countries, especially small island states, is under threat. So we started to use our homework preparation, being very active in the Global South, having great experience in chairing non-aligned movement for 4 years, with great success, with unanimous support from this institution, which reflected in unanimous decision to extend our chairmanship for 1 more year. At the same time, being actively involved in European politics, and with 10 members of European Union, Azerbaijan signed or adopted a strategic partnership declarations and agreements. So we decided that could work, and we started to work immediately. So we work on 2 tracks mainly, preparation and substance. On both, there have been a lot of rocks and bumps, but I think the final result demonstrates that it was a success story. Preparation was a big challenge because unlike previous COPs, we had not 2 years, but only 11 months to prepare. We had to build all those great installations in the stadium and around it, close to 200,000 square meters of covered space. And everybody was happy with the organizational side. It was not only to create that site, but also logistics, transportation, accommodation, certification of our hotels, finding another space for guests to stay because we do not have so many rooms. We had 76,000 of registered participants from 197 countries. Another problem which we did not expect was attempts to boycott COP29 due to political reasons, and that was very unexpected. I don't think that any other country which hosted this event faced this kind of resistance, but we also managed to deal with that, so boycott failed. Though, as you mentioned, some countries, especially France, was doing its utmost to discredit the event, and I have information from my colleagues, presidents, that French president personally was contacting many of them saying not to go to Baku. So even that was used in order to stop leaders to come, but it failed. 80 heads of states and governments came to Baku, and that once again demonstrated that Azerbaijan is considered to be a reliable partner. With respect to what you said about the absence of the President of the European Commission, as far as I know, that was the first COP when President of the European Commission did not attend, though the participation of the President of the Commission was confirmed a couple of months before, and even at the initiative of European Commission, a special session was planned to address the issue of green cable project with the participation of the leaders of Azerbaijan, Georgia, Hungary, and Romania, those countries which are involved. Again, that event was proposed by European Commission, and we found a place to squeeze it in because it was too busy, but it was last-minute cancel of the visit, which was a surprise. I know that organizing committee of COP29 communicated with European Commission saying that COP is for 2 weeks, and there is a lot of time to come. By the way, Secretary General of the United Nations came twice, at the opening and at the closing. But again, this message was ignored by European Commission. And of course, COP29 did not suffer from that, but absence of European Commission, which is a party to COP, of course, raises a lot of questions. But nevertheless, from point of view of organizational side, it was a success story, definitely. I already said once that we had only 10 complaints, which have been addressed immediately. So now, with respect to the results, many people call it, and I join that, Baku breakthrough, because for almost 10 years, the parties could not agree on carbon market. And the first days of COP already started with a success, and the agreement on carbon market, Article 6 of Paris Agreement, was achieved. And that was really a great success, and everybody was happy about that. So what couldn't have been agreed for 10 years was agreed in Baku. And of course, the financing, because the main topic of COP was finance. So I know that there have been a lot of expectations that $1 trillion would be allocated, but that was absolutely unrealistic. So what was achieved that we tripled the financing for coming years, because before COP29, the latest agreed figure was $100 billion US. So here in Baku, we made it $300 billion. So when someone says that it was a failure, it's not fair. It was a real success and also a legacy which will be used for the future. There have been a lot of other important initiatives. Total initiatives of Azerbaijan were 14. Don't want to mention all of them, but that demonstrates that we treated this issue very seriously. And of course, another legacy, which I'm sure will remain at the future COPs, is the creation of Troika between the current, previous, and the future host country. So that's how it was organized. And this creates a synergy because we built our success on a success in UAE, on a success of COP28 UAE consensus, and we used the experience. So this year COP in Brazil will definitely build its, I hope, success story on UAE and Azerbaijan's success. So, and of course, our green agenda, which is another topic, absolutely fits in the global green agenda and green transition. We did, I think, a lot already, and many more projects to be implemented in the near future. So I would once again call it a very big success, and also important factor for us, it was a country presentation. Never in our region something similar was held. Never so many guests gathered in one place in our region. So it was a country presentation, and all those whom I met said, many of them, I mean those who visit us for the first time, that they were impressed with what they've seen. Because lack of information about Azerbaijan and also deliberate misinformation about the country actually influence the minds of many people. So when they come to Azerbaijan, when they see vibrant society, when they see educated people, trained personnel, when they see the beauty of the city and the total comfort of the society, of course it impresses. So we had different targets, and all of them been met. So another success of Azerbaijan.
Mr. President, Azerbaijan has increased its gas exports to many countries in Europe, Italy, Greece, Hungary, Turkey. Could you tell us about your vision for Azerbaijan in helping to secure energy resources for Europe in the future?
Yes, our gas export is growing, and we are now expanding the geography of gas supplies using different infrastructure projects. Main is the Southern Gas Corridor, but also extensions. And due to the new interconnectors which have been inaugurated relatively recently in Europe, our access to different markets is possible. 2022, as you know, when Russian-Ukrainian war led to disruption of Russian gas supplies to Europe, European Commission turned to Azerbaijan asking us to help. And at that time, the president of European Commission came to Baku, here. Exactly, we were just signing that declaration just outside this room. So we said, okay, we are ready to help you and to increase, to double our gas supply to Europe. At that time, our gas supply to Europe was 7 billion cubic meters. And we started to work on that. We started to invest and to look for opportunities how to move our gas through different interconnectors. And since that time, the number of countries in Europe which are now recipients of our gas grew, and now it's equal to 10. So in total, it's 12 countries, 10 of them are European, and 8 out of 10 are members of EU. So we expanded the geography and we increased the volume of gas. And for many countries, members of European Union, Azerbaijani gas now makes about half of their domestic consumption. And this is really a serious support which we demonstrate to our partners in Europe. So our future plans are to expand the geography. We already are in negotiations with some other European countries which are close to those which are already receiving our gas. And that is possible, I think, in the coming years. But again, since 2022 until now, it was a dramatic change. Because at that time, our gas export was Georgia, Turkey, Greece, Italy. That was it. And then we added Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, Northern Macedonia, Slovakia, Croatia, and Hungary. So all that happened in a relatively short period of time. So we have resources because our proven resources are growing. Many years ago, they have been estimated at a level of 2.6 trillion cubic meters. But now with new discoveries and more discoveries to come, it will be more. This year, we hope we will get first gas from ACG, so-called deep gas project, which will be a substantial contribution to overall gas production. And we are planning to work with the partners in order to increase gas production from Absheron field from 1.5 to 5 BCM, understanding that the main supply of gas still is Shah Deniz, which will remain as it is. And many more projects which are very promising, like Karabakh, Babek, Asiman, and others. So that will increase our potential. So now the main issue is how to get to new destinations. For that, there should be additional investments in Europe in order to expand the existing interconnectors or maybe to build more. But even now, with the coverage of 12 countries by pipeline gas, Azerbaijan, I think, is now one of the leading countries in the world with such a broad geography. And I think in Europe also, one of the leading countries with respect to geography, because geography is as important as volumes, because for some countries, even 1 billion cubic meters makes a lot of difference. So we treat our commitments with a high level of responsibility. But of course, answering this question, I cannot avoid one issue, which also must be addressed. So we invest a lot, and we try to help European Union coping with shortage of gas. At the same time, we are facing the situation when European banks no longer are financing the fossil fuel projects. So on one hand, they ask us for additional supply. On the other hand, they deprive us from resources. For instance, European Investment Bank completely stopped financing fossil fuel projects. EBRD, as far as I know, has a very small share still. So if this continues, then there'll be just no means to invest, because in this business you use your corporate financing for about 30%, but the rest money you borrow. So where we are going to borrow the money? Or Europeans who want to build interconnectors between themselves. So this is an issue, I think, which should be addressed. And the second, not the second, but another issue is the timetable for supplies. Because with the green transition, the share of fossil fuel in European Union area will go down. So what will happen? So there are a lot of open issues. We are dealing with that in regular consultations with European officials. But if European Union needs more gas from us, they should also do their homework. We are doing ours, they should do theirs.
Mr. President, may I ask just one more question in English? Thank you. You've spoken about the value of countries minding their own business. We've also seen some indications of what a future Trump administration might do in terms of foreign policy. Do you think this means that globalization, as we've understood it to this point, has had its day?
I think even before that, if you notice, last several years, we don't hear a lot about globalization. It was a kind of a trend, maybe 10, 15 years ago, but it didn't work because many countries were opposing it, and for many countries, it was not clear what does it mean. Globalization mean more trade, or globalization mean a unification of all into one substance, if I may use this word. So we've been always against it, and we've been very vocal, even during the times when globalization was considered by the main trend of Western politics. But even before President Trump was elected, this issue more or less is not on top of the agenda, but I'm sure that it will be completely eliminated because it didn't work. Many people did not even understand what it means. And it was used as a tool of penetration and establishing platforms for domination and for actually brainwashing of young generation. Because the main target of globalization were young generation, because that was calculated approach in order to make them so-called people of the world, people without culture, without nationality, without national identity, without national pride. Be just a kind of a robot in the hands of those who have a remote control. So I'm sure it's done already, it's finished.
Investigators have decoded the black boxes from the Azal flight that crashed near Aktau, Kazakhstan. The Brazilian Aeronautical Accidents Investigation and Prevention Center has completed analyzing the flight recorder data, and the results were sent to authorities in Kazakhstan. The December 25th crash claimed 38 lives, leaving 29 survivors. The flight en route from Baku to Grozny went down near Aktau. The investigation on the cause of the tragedy continues. The U.S. Congress formally certified President-elect Donald Trump's victory in the November 5th election, completing the final step before his January 20th inauguration. Vice President Kamala Harris, who lost to Trump in November, presided over the Senate session to certify the election results, which proceeded without incident. This stood in stark contrast to the January 6th of 2021, when a mob attacked the Capitol building. Security was heightened with metal fences and police checkpoints at the Capitol, set to remain in place until Trump's inauguration. Louisiana has reported the first U.S. death from H5N1 bird flu. Meanwhile, experts are urging flu shots to protect against seasonal influenza and potential infections.
The Louisiana Department of Health announced that a patient hospitalized with H5N1 bird flu has died, marking the first reported human death from the virus in the United States. The patient, over 65 years old with underlying health conditions, was hospitalized on December 18th after exposure to backyard chickens and wild birds. Since April, nearly 70 bird flu cases have been reported in the U.S., primarily among farm workers, but the risk to the public remains low. The outbreak, which started in 2022, has killed nearly 130 million birds and affected 917 dairy herds. While the current bird flu outbreak poses little risk to humans, health experts are encouraging flu shots to guard against seasonal influenza and reduce the risk of co-infection.
It's still a good time to get your flu shot. Flu shot's going to prevent not avian influenza, but seasonal influenza and the possibility of being co-infected with those viruses, which is really what we're more concerned in the long run, that this bird flu that we have spreading across the US right now has some kind of mutation or a reassortment event, which makes it more transmissible between people, which is what we have not seen yet.
Globally, more than 950 human cases of bird flu have been reported, with about half resulting in death, according to the World Health Organization.
U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein expressed optimism on progress of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hezbollah. After meetings with Lebanese caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati and Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri, Hochstein reaffirmed U.S. support for the agreement. Earlier, he visited Naqoura in southern Lebanon to oversee the ceasefire implementation.
The same work that led to the withdrawal today of the Israeli military will continue. And therefore, that is what will enable the next phase, which we're now focused on, which is to withdraw from the next sector of territory, and then after that, the final one. So this is going according to the plan, maybe not according to exact expectations of everybody in Lebanon or Israel, but we have 20 days left to reach the 60 days. We are going to continue the same work that led to the successful deployment and withdrawal
The UK government is continuing to resist calls for a public inquiry into so-called grooming gangs, but is promising new legislation to tackle the issue. This comes as an online row with Tesla owner Elon Musk stretches into another day. AnewZ's correspondent Ollie Barrett brings more from London.
Well, the UK government says it is not going to set up a new national inquiry into this so-called grooming gang scandal, but it is bringing in legislation that, for example, will see criminal sanctions for people who work with children if they don't report claims of abuse. Now, the opposition Conservatives here in Britain have attacked the government on this, as have the Reform Party led by Nigel Farage, but the row between Elon Musk and the UK government continues. He has even called the UK Prime Minister in one of his latest postings on social media evil because of the connections he says that he has to this scandal when he was Director of Public Prosecutions before becoming a politician and before he became the UK Prime Minister. The UK government has tried to hit back against some of these claims from Elon Musk over the last 48 hours or so, but is also trying not to get drawn too much into a war of words with the entrepreneur who is set to become a key part of the Trump administration after inauguration on January the 20th. And it's not the only European country involved in a war of words and a back and forth and controversy when it comes to Elon Musk's criticisms. We've seen the French President Emmanuel Macron also saying that he believes that Elon Musk has been intervening directly in elections, and he cited some comments that Elon Musk has been making about support for the AfD party in Germany, a party that many in Germany see and describe as a far-right political party. Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, insists that he is not going to engage directly with Elon Musk and has said, don't feed the troll, is how he has described some of the comments that Elon Musk has been making about German politics and the upcoming German election. We've also seen the Norwegian Prime Minister express concern about Elon Musk's comments and postings about European politics too. So real concern here in Europe about a man who, as I say, will be an important part, we think, of the incoming Donald Trump administration in Washington, being so involved in such strong opinions about European politics and, crucially, upcoming European electoral events such as we are seeing in Germany. Here in the UK, the controversy, though, continues domestically as well, with a row between the political parties about exactly what to do about the grooming gang scandal that's been uncovered in a series of English towns and cities. The Conservatives, the Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, has talked about the importation of alien cultures to the UK being responsible in part for a story like that. He's been criticised by that. For the Liberal Democrats, who say that he should now be fired from his position as Shadow Justice Secretary in the opposition Conservatives. So a domestic row here in the UK, a row between the UK government and Elon Musk, who's been sharply critical of a series of UK government figures, and a series of European governments also expressing concern about Elon Musk involving himself so directly with some of his comments in European affairs. Ollie Barrett for AnewZ in London.
Jean-Marie Le Pen, founder of France's far-right National Front party, has died at the age of 96. His political career left a lasting impact on the French political landscape. Le Pen founded the National Front in 1972, championing nationalist ideals. He stunned France in 2002 by making it to the presidential runoff against Jacques Chirac. His daughter, Marine Le Pen, later rebranded the party as the National Rally, turning it into a major political force. Syria's new trade minister, Maher Khalil Hassan, said U.S. sanctions are blocking fuel and wheat imports, warning of a catastrophe unless they are lifted. Sanctions imposed during Assad's rule targeted his government and state institutions. The caretaker government, formed by the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group after ousting Bashar al-Assad in December, has secured short-term supplies. Russia and Iran, once major suppliers of wheat and oil, halted support after Assad's ousting. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is poised to ease restrictions on humanitarian aid to Syria, allowing for more rapid delivery of basic supplies without fully lifting sanctions on the new government in Damascus. The limited step involves U.S. Treasury Department waivers for aid groups and companies offering essential services such as water, electricity, and other humanitarian supplies, but it falls short of a broader sanctions rollback. Washington remains cautious about lifting the sanctions imposed during Syria's 13-year-long civil war. According to the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. wants assurances that the new leadership in Damascus will protect the rights of women and minorities. Damascus International Airport has resumed international flights following a month-long closure.
Syria's Damascus International Airport resumed international flights on January 7 following a closure in early December due to the ongoing conflict. The airport had been temporarily shut down on December 8 amid the fighting associated with the fall of President Bashar al-Assad's government. However, flight operations were gradually reinstated on December 17 after the political changes earlier that month. On January 7, a Qatar Airways flight landed at the airport, making the first international flight from the airline to Damascus in over 13 years. This return of international flights followed earlier smaller-scale operations by airlines such as Iran's Mirage Airlines and Syria's Cham Wings before the airport's closure. Employees had been preparing the airport for the resumption of international services. In addition to the return of international flights, a domestic flight between Damascus and Aleppo, Syria's second-largest city, also took place, marking the first service between the two cities since the airport's closure.
At least 95 people have been confirmed dead and 130 are injured after a major earthquake struck a remote region of mountainous Tibet near Mount Everest. Tremors were also felt in Nepal and parts of India.
A powerful 6.8 magnitude earthquake rocked the northern foothills of the Himalayas, with its epicenter located in Tingri, a rural Chinese county known as the northern gateway to the Everest region. The tremors, which reached neighboring countries, caused significant damage and loss of life. In Tibet's Latsi County, streets were covered in debris as buildings were destroyed and people were left injured. Nearly 100 people were confirmed dead and 100 others were injured on the Tibetan side, according to China's state-run news agency Xinhua. The U.S. Geological Service placed the quake's magnitude at 7.1. The tremors were also felt in Kathmandu, Nepal's capital. Residents fled their homes as the earthquake's effects reached nearly 400 kilometers away. The tremors were also felt in neighboring Bhutan and India, where buildings shook, though there were no immediate reports of significant damage or casualties in these regions. In Nepal, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority reported that the tremors were felt across 7 hill districts bordering Tibet. A series of aftershocks have hit China's Xinjiang Autonomous Region, and further tremors could be possible in the region, said the China Earthquake Network Center.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia's casualties in the Kursk region have reached 38,000, with almost 15,000 of them being classified as, quote, irreversible. Zelensky said that the Kursk operation that began in August had successfully created a buffer zone, preventing Russian forces from advancing into critical areas of eastern Ukraine. Russia's National Guard released footage over the weekend claiming they repelled a Ukrainian offensive in the Kursk region. The Russian Defense Ministry also stated that their forces had disrupted Ukrainian attempts to breach their defenses. Russia says it has captured the town of Kurakhove in the Donetsk region in what would be a key advance after months of steady gains in the area. Ukrainian forces did not confirm the claim, saying only that Russia was conducting assault operations in the area. Dasha Chernishova brings more from Moscow.
Russia says its forces have captured an important logistics hub of Kurakhove in the Donetsk People's Republic. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, the Ukrainian military has lost over 12,000 troops and up to 3,000 units of military hardware while fighting for Kurakhove, one of the largest settlements in southwestern Donbas. Moscow says over the past decade, Kyiv has turned Kurakhove into a powerful fortified area with a developed network of firing positions and underground communications. The fighting has been taking place for months, and Moscow says that the city was defended by a water basin from the north, which significantly limited the maneuverability of the Russian assault units. Moscow also claims Ukraine had deployed around 15,000 troops, including many foreign mercenaries, to defend the town, reinforcing them with artillery and tanks. The development will complicate Ukraine's logistical support in the area. It will also mean Ukraine will no longer have the ability to shell the regional capital Donetsk, which had been under fire since 2014. The MOD says Russian forces have more room to maneuver and increase the pace of advance in that direction. Russia's defense ministry also claims to have captured the village of Dachinsk, southwest of Pokrovsk, another major city in the Donetsk region that its troops have been targeting. Meanwhile, Moscow confirmed that Ukraine attempted a so-called breakthrough in the Kursk region near the village of Berdin. However, Moscow says that attempt was repelled. Ukraine has been in control of parts of Russia's Kursk region since last August. And in another Russian border region of Belgrade, the governor said Ukraine launched a new attack on Christmas Eve. Russian air defenses have shot down several targets with no casualties reported. The governor said a car and 2 houses had been damaged by shrapnel in the village of Tavrovo. Dasha Chernishova in Moscow for AnewZ.
Protests in Georgia passed the 40-day mark. Demonstrations that began following the contested October election and intensified after the halt to the EU accession talks continued in Tbilisi on Orthodox Christmas.
While Orthodox Christians in Georgia are celebrating Christmas, the protests that began after the parliamentary elections held on October 26 and escalated due to the government's decision regarding the EU continued in Tbilisi for the 40th day despite the holiday. Those who wanted to celebrate Christmas in a demonstration gathered in front of the parliament building at night. The demonstrators, carrying EU and Georgian flags and candles for the holiday, marched through the streets of Tbilisi. They closed Shota Rustaveli Avenue in front of the parliament, calling for new parliamentary elections. The European Union, United States, former Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili and the opposition do not accept the parliamentary elections won by the ruling Georgian Dream Party and are reacting to the government suspension of the start of EU accession negotiations. The United States and some European countries have imposed sanctions on Georgian government officials.
Recently resurfaced video showing former Armenian President Levon Ter-Petrosyan stating that all ethnic minorities, including Azerbaijanis, were bound to be removed from Armenia has been the subject of discussion over the past few days. Many argue that this statement amounts to confession of an ethnic cleansing carried out by Armenia against Azerbaijanis. Earlier, our colleague Orhan Amashov interviewed Professor of Law Armando Marquez Guedes on this subject.
In early 90s, the former Baksan, the then president of Armenia, Levon Ter-Petrosyan, said that for Armenian statehood to emerge, it was absolutely vital to get rid of all the ethnic minorities, because that was a question of survival for them. And this video recently resurfaced, and the question emerged when somebody, the state leader, says that we have achieved something that we set out to achieve. That was the ambition of 600-year-old ambition to get rid of all ethnic minorities, including Azerbaijanis from Armenia, to establish Armenian statehood. What is your legal interpretation of what is of his statement?
It would be legally ethnic cleansing, so I think it would be illegal for contemporary purposes. I think this was a very bad idea in 1991 to make that kind of statement. I understand the spirit, I understand the will to do so, but that sounds so 1910s, doesn't it? It's before the UN actually stood with its international law. I think it would be equivalent to what happened in the Balkans with ethnic cleansing. Try to kick out everyone who's not your nationality. It sounds like Eastern European nationalism, with ethnically based, which is, or religiously based, which is utter nonsense. This is not the kind of world we want to drift in, not after Woodrow Wilson, and certainly not after Franklin Delano Roosevelt or Winston Churchill.
Azerbaijan and Armenia have been engaged in peace talks since the end of the Second Karabakh War in 2020. The two sides say that the peace treaty is 80% complete. Still, there are some stumbling blocks remaining. Azerbaijan says Armenia's constitution contains territorial pretensions towards Azerbaijan's sovereign territory, with Yerevan downplaying the legal importance of that provision enshrined in the preamble of Armenia's constitution. On the external factors to the peace process, we're talking to Professor Carlos Uriante Sanchez of the Institute of Debate and Analysis of Security Policies in Spain. Welcome, Professor. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation to participate in the program. Thank you.
Well, Baku and Yerevan are engaged in bilateral talks. The European Union has not mediated directly between the parties since summer 2023, in large part because Baku says Paris is interfering on Yerevan's side using EU. How would you say that France is affecting the peace process, or trying to?
Well, I think that after the defeat of Armenia, now also with the defeat of Russia in Syria, I think that maybe both cases are related. There is like a free look nowadays, in not just in the Caucasus but also in the Middle East, because Russia is not anymore there. And I think that maybe France wants to take any advantage, any position in this part of the world after Russia has left Caucasus and also the Middle East. However, I think that this French position is not an European Union position. And in this regard, I think that France should speak to the other member states of the European Union in order to take positions regarding the Caucasus and the Middle East as well.
What sort of a role could large weapons procurement deals signed by Armenia with France and India play in the future of the peace talks in South Caucasus?
Yes, I have seen that Armenia has signed contracts for the acquisition of advanced defense systems, not just from France, but also from India. For instance, in the case of India, Armenia has bought Pinaka missiles launchers and Akash anti-aircraft systems with a volume of these contracts of amount to $600 for the year 2024 and 2025. It means that Armenia is consolidating France and India as weapon suppliers. And I can understand that Armenia, after the defeat of the war faced Azerbaijan, wants to have security guarantees, but this is not the way. If Armenians wants to close a long-term peace with Azerbaijan, I don't think so that the way is to stronger its army. This is not a good signal in order to try to close the period after the war and watch for a common future together with Azerbaijan.
You briefly touched upon this on the start of the interview, but would you say that France selling weapons to Armenia is a way for Paris to enter the region of South Caucasus and have some influence in this part of the world?
Yes, probably, because if Russia is not anymore in Syria and also Armenia doesn't have anymore the support of Russia, it means that if Armenia and Syria, two former supporters of Russia Federation, they are not supporters and allies anymore, it means that Russia has lost power in the Middle East and the South Caucasus, and in this regard, maybe France wants to occupy this space. But we must take into consideration that there are other actors like Turkey or like Iran. And in my point of view, I think that if France wants to take any advantage position in the South Caucasus, France would have to speak to the other member states of the European Union to have a common position, all of them.
Professor, thank you.
It's not a good way to take decisions alone.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us and sharing your insights and opinions. In the heart of capital of Azerbaijan, Baku, where traditions and cultures blend seamlessly, Orthodox Christians gathered to celebrate Christmas.
Orthodox Christians are observing their sacred celebration and traditions in the Holy Mir Bearers Cathedral in Baku, Azerbaijan. For many of them, this is the time of prayer, reflection, and community. Christmas is a time to come together, celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, and pray for peace and unity. Churches are beautifully decorated with candles and icons, and the sound of sacred hymns fills the air as worshippers come together in prayer and celebration. Each year, prayers and liturgical services are held in Orthodox churches across the country, providing an opportunity for the faithful to gather in worship and ask for peace and health. The celebration begins on the evening of January 6 with a solemn liturgy. Worshippers fast until the first star appears, symbolizing the Star of Bethlehem that guided the wise men. Orthodox Christians in Baku celebrate not just the birth of Christ, but also the spirit of unity and hope that this holiday brings.
And in tech news, innovators from around the world gathered in Las Vegas for the Consumer Electronics Show, showcasing the latest in AI, VR, and health tech. However, concerns over new tariffs announced by Donald Trump are casting a shadow over the event.
At CES 2025 in Las Vegas, tech innovators are unveiling the newest gadgets aimed at transforming everyday life. The health tech is making a splash with products like a device designed to help the elderly maintain muscle strength by simulating yoga movements.
This is particularly good for elderly and patients that cannot work out on their own or work out independently. So just like this, up and down. The arms go up till 95-degree angle and legs go up 96-degree angle.
Meanwhile, virtual reality and AI tools continue to push the boundaries of immersive experiences. HoloConnect is demonstrating how AI and holograms can revolutionize communication, allowing remote employees and loved ones to interact as if they were in the same room.
Yeah, well, we use it for educational purposes. Imagine having a teacher being presented from one centralized location where I stand, but being presented in like 10 or 20 locations, doing a class and having feedback with students in those 20 locations. And we also now have new customers, which are like customers that use it as a home device to bring in their mother, to bring in their daughter or a loved one as a live hologram into their room.
Among the highlights in the Robot, an AI robotic pet that mimics a real dog, responding to touch and even recognizing its owner.
This is the robot, and then it's robot means the AI robotic pet. It's like a real cat dog. You can touch it, it will feel your touching, and it can recognize you and recognize all kinds of items. If you can try to build some long-term relationship with human beings, in knows who is friend, who is strangers, and try to play with you.
However, as tech companies push forward with these innovations, they face a growing uncertainty. President-elect Donald Trump's proposed tariffs on imports from China, Mexico and Canada are a major concern, especially for automakers. Honda has warned that permanent tariffs could force them to reconsider their production strategies, potentially shifting more operations to the US in an effort to avoid higher import costs. Industry experts worry these tariffs could disrupt the global supply chain and increase the price of new technology.
That's all from us for now. Thank you for tuning in and keep watching AnewZ.